Alright, hi, this is Carl Duzet, also known as Zarepath in the custom magic community, and today I wanted to go over my Great Designer Search 3 multiple choice test. Today is the day of the test. I'm not putting up this video until Saturday afternoon Pacific time because we're not allowed to talk about the test with anybody else until that point, so there's not even the possibility of cheating off of each other or helping each other out. But I wanted to make this video so I could post it then, so people who weren't able to take the test can look at it. People who are nervous about their answers can at least see what somebody else was putting and their thought process. I wanted to talk through my thought process as I did this. I have here, all of my my answers, written out on paper. And today in the video, I'm just going to put them into the form. And part of this is also to help me talk it through. And then if I realize as I do this that I've picked the wrong thing or I've overlooked something important, this should hopefully be helpful for me as well. So I went try hard on this. I got up this morning. I printed it out. I went through everything. I went through again. I did research on the different things that I wasn't positive about. But I feel pretty good about the test. About 63 of the 75 questions, I feel like 100% positive on after my first pass. I was like, this is definitely the answer. There were 12 questions left, though, that I just was not sure. And I spent the bulk of my time doing research on those and trying to, become more certain about them. I have those narrowed down to just 2 questions left where I'm still not entirely sure which way I'm going to go. I would not be shocked if I got those last 2 questions wrong. I would not be shocked if any of the ones I got wrong were within that final 12. But I feel good enough about most of those 12 that I feel like I should have a good score. Mark Rosewater said that among R&D employees, the top score getter got 74 out of 75. So even the people who do this full-time officially did not get a perfect score, which is a little foreboding, but I hopefully will also mean that they'll have a generous curve, which they might need considering how many people are doing this. Anyway, I'm just going to start going through the questions. So 1, what is the most appropriate color for this card? Scrappy Survivor, CMC 6, Creature, 5/5 Menace and Prowess. Color pie question, what color has both Menace and Prowess? Well, that is red. Rarity. I actually spent longer on this than I probably should have. My initial instinct was uncommon, but then I thought, well, why couldn't this be common? Red has menace creatures at common that big, oftentimes with one additional thing. There was one with cycling that was like a 5/5 menace for 6 that happened to have cycling as well. And I think part of the reason I feel comfortable putting it as uncommon is that, here, let's see, CMC equals 6, and color is red, and has menace. And this is something I ended up doing a lot as I was researching my questions, is just looking, are there other cards like this card? Okay, so here's the other things with menace. That one's rare. That one's uncommon. That one's uncommon. This is, pretty close to what we have, except has prowess instead of the extra power. This one is, a 5/4 menace, but it has cycling. The one I was thinking of, though, has improvise. And it's red. Oh, okay. Enraged Giant. Trample Haste. It's a 4/4. Okay, for some reason I thought that was common, and that kind of gave me pause. But this is definitely uncommon. Menace and Prowess both kind of affect the board. They combine together to make it a very scary thing to block. Red probably shouldn't get such efficient, high-cost, big creatures at common. I think they can have one that's playable. Also, there's the keyword soup idea. These are 2 of the most recent keywords that Wizards has, and so having both of them on the same card is a certain amount of complexity. And they're both board complexity, whereas cycling is not board complexity, right? Like, it's just something else you can do. It's more strategic complexity in your hand for the owner. Okay, so that's an uncommon. We're going to change one of its keywords. Um, this question is mostly about, it's another color pie thing, which result in a card that couldn't be multicolor or monocolor. So, what did I put on this? Okay, so First Strike and Prowess are both in red. Hexproof and Prowess are both in blue. Lifelink and Menace are both in black, which leaves Menace and Vigilance. There's no one color that could have a creature with both of those abilities on it. What's the most appropriate color combination for this multicolor card? This was a difficult one. This was one of my 12. And at first I looked at it and said, well, obviously this is red and green, right? But then I thought, wait a minute, Trample doesn't necessarily mean that this is green, because red has Trample. The card Traitorous Blood is a 3-cost card that does the same thing, minus the hexproof and +1/+1. And so really, you're taking Traitorous Blood, which is a red card, and adding +1/+1 and hexproof, which could easily be blue. Blue grants hexproof. It more often grants hexproof than has hexproof at common. And so then it became a question of, all right, what's primary and what's secondary? Red is secondary in Trample. Green is primary. Blue is primary in hexproof. Green is secondary. And so I kind of mapped out the things. Well, what is more likely? And to me, it just seemed equally likely. I looked at recent sets. There seems to be the same amount of hexproof granting in both blue and green, because I thought for a minute, well, maybe green has the hexproof creatures, blue grants hexproof more, but it seemed to be equal. I thought, well, how am I going to solve this? And I came back to it later, and I suddenly realized +1/+1 actually is a big clue here, because red does not grant both power and toughness, generally. If it does, this number is usually way higher than that one. Blue does not usually grant power and toughness, usually just grants toughness on its tricks. Green, however, can do both. And so I feel like red-green is more appropriate because of the +1/+1. I feel certain about that. Appropriate rarity. It's kind of a common effect, except that you're giving, it's 2 colors, and it's kind of a keyword soup. Haste, hexproof, and trample. The fact that there's 3 different keywords on it makes me think that alone should make it uncommon. I feel like if they wanted this to be common, they would make it a little more elegant, I think, and have it just be granting haste and hexproof and trample and not +1/+1. Like, one of those 4 things would have to be removed for it to even be considered as a common. What are we least likely to change about this card? Assuming it's still red-green, okay? That was kind of a red herring, because this makes you think that the answer has to do with the colors, but it doesn't, because the least likely change they're actually going to make isn't, bumping that up so it's more significant. We're changing hexproof to it has to be blocked. I mean, that doesn't make any difference to the color anyway. No difference to the color. Sorcery to instant makes it, you can use it in more interesting ways and makes it much more powerful, which will make people think, well, maybe CMC4, that's just not fair anymore. But the real change they would make is changing haste to double strike, because the card doesn't do anything anymore if it doesn't grant haste. If you steal their creature on your turn, and remember, in this instance, it's still a sorcery. If you steal their creature and untap it, but it doesn't gain haste, then then you probably can't attack with it. It seems, or in the case that you can't attack with it because it's not summoning sick, the issue is more that you should always be able to attack with the card that you get, right? Granting haste is more important than any of this other stuff, for clarity's sake. All right. Which of these phrases is a follower of White's philosophy? I'll catch up on my pages. Least likely to say, there's a series of 5 questions about the color pie. They are willing to preemptively stop evil. They're willing to be violent. They don't like it when people just follow their heart instead of following the rules. A system without structure is a system asking to fail. Sometimes an individual suffers so the larger group can thrive. Yes. So this is the one they're not going to say. What is follower of blues philosophy least likely to say? This one. The fact that they say genes is kind of the trick there, because people think, oh, genetics, science. Blue is all about science. But really, their philosophy states that your genetics don't matter. It's your experience. They're the ultimate nurture over nature in their philosophy. Tools, they like using artifacts and tools as part of their society. Fear of change is dangerous. They love change. Every person has the ability to become anything. Like, those two statements directly contradict. So it has to be one of those two, right? Action should only follow thought. They think first. Sometimes they think twice. You're shaped more by your genes than your experience is the correct answer. Sometimes you have to put others ahead of yourself. That is, black always puts itself first. The weak serve a purpose as a resource for the strong is true. Doing what needs to be done is the difference between success and failure. They believe that. I didn't create the system, just understand how to take advantage of it. They also believe that. Only I choose what path I walk. Yes. So that is the answer. Red. Mistakes should be avoided at all costs. Red is willing to make mistakes. They prefer action and effort over perfection. The fewer rules, the better. The greatest regrets are about things you didn't do, not things you did. And again, I feel like those two statements kind of contradict each other in some ways, which is a hint that the answer is going to be one of those two. And we know that they prefer to do things as opposed to not do them. Life without passion is a life unlived. Again, those statements work together. Life is messy. This statement directly contradicts many of the other ones, so you don't even have to know that much more about the pie to do it. Green. Adaptation is a slow process was a tempting one for me, because I thought, well, green is fine with adaptation. Nature adapts, Darwinism, things like that. But I think this statement is more in contrast to blue's sense that you need to be changing and adapting to your environment as much as possible so you can perfect yourself. Like, it's a very progress focused view of adaptation, whereas green's is more things are naturally going to adapt, and you don't need to rush that process. Killing for sport is just a part of life is something they would disagree with. When you look at green color pie articles, one main thing that's mentioned is that green feels like, artificially harming the ecology is a problem. Like, removing apex predators for no reason does damage the environment, right? Killing for sport is anti-green. They would not say it's just a part of life. The trick here is it says just a part of life, because the big thing with green is they just kind of is acceptance of the natural order. But the problem with this statement is it contradicts the natural order. It shortcuts it. Battle cry, Ravna cassette. Which guild? Immediately, obviously, Boros. It was a Boros mechanic before. But then I thought, well, let me look at the other guilds just in case. Selesnya does like going wide. So maybe Selesnya. Gruul is aggressive. Rakdos is aggressive. But Rakdos doesn't really help each other. And Gruul, similarly, is not about helping the team. Boros helps the team and is aggressive. It's like a perfect mix of Battalion and Radiance. Selesnya, Azorius, no, obviously not. Boros has the most things going for it there. Which effect is usually seen on more instants than sorceries. Land fetching is almost always done at sorcery speed. Then you can kind of end your turn and shuffle while your opponent starts making actions. It speeds the game that way. Land destruction is almost always at sorcery speed. Reanimation is also almost always at sorcery speed, because it becomes like this huge blowout trick if you're doing it at an instant speed, summoning blockers from the graveyard. Discard effects cannot be done at instant speed, because there's a window in the draw step where you can make them discard before they can play their card, as long as it's a sorcery speed action or a land. Direct damage is one that's more often on instants and sorceries, because it's an interactive tool, and Wizards likes having those interactive tools available at instant speed, so that you can respond to things. You can remove their things before, in response to them trying to do something with it. Biggest problem design-wise with long-acting giant growth. So this card does something on one turn, then does another thing the next, and a little bit weaker on the third turn, but it doesn't track it. It's a sorcery. The spell is not too cheap. It requires you to track things for 3 turns without any way to mark it. And Wizards does not print cards like that anymore. There's kind of a design argument for this, but it's not a problem so much as this is a problem. And this is just a use problem. Like, this is a way bigger problem than the other ones. It being able to work in combat, I don't know about that. Okay, this card was a hybrid creature. What colors would it be? So I know blue has this. Their power and toughness each equal to the number of cards in your hand. What I didn't realize till I checked Gatherer was Morrow, the card, which is based off Mark Rosewater, has this text, and it's green. It's also on prominent blue-green cards like Tigana, not Tigana, that is a book. Tishana, the merfolk, mythic merfolk. So this would be a blue-green hybrid card. Also, it has flash, and flash is mostly in blue and green. So that's a clue for that as well. Most likely rarity. Well, Morrow, which has this effect, is at rare. I think every card that has this effect is rare or higher. And so the answer is rare. It is not splashy enough to be a mythic, especially when you compare it to Tishana that has other things going for it as well. It doesn't have flash, but it's bigger, and it makes you so you have no maximum hand size. You draw cards when you play it. Definitely a rare. What ability could be added to this creature without changing its colors? I like that they say use your answer from question 15, because sometimes it's not clear that whether the question's answers are supposed to stack on each other to help inform the next answer or not. They make it clear in this test. So it's blue-green hybrid. Must be blocked if able is not a blue ability. And this is a hybrid, so we're looking for an ability that works in both blue and green. Whenever it deals damage to an opponent, draw a card. Curiosity is in blue and recently secondary in green, I believe. At the end of your turn, untap it. Untapping creatures is in both blue and green, but in blue's case, it's most commonly also on things that can also tap. So tap or untap a thing. Or, yeah, I think that's it. And this is also, this fits the card better also. This is not a blue-green thing. It's green, but not really blue. Can't be blocked by more than one creature. Also not blue. This is the right answer. It fits both colors. And there's an argument. There's an argument here, but this seems more obviously within both colors, and there's reasons why this may not. Like, why isn't it just vigilance? If you want that ability, and it's because blue doesn't get vigilance. And so kind of cheating for the vigilance is a bend, whereas that is not. All right, player finishes their first game of Magic. What do we care most about? Seeing potential depth is important. Understanding the cards on their deck is not as important. They don't need to understand everything that happened. They want to play again. Seems very important, right? They've seen most of the card types, mostly evergreen keywords. When you teach someone, you don't want to be like, all right, this is what the Planeswalker does. This is what artifacts do, enchantments, sorceries, instants, all of that. I don't think that's as important. They have a favorite card. Those are nice potential outcomes. Most of the evergreen keywords means they're going to see a bunch of different colors. And it seems like a recipe for disaster to make sure they see as much stuff as possible. Wanting to play again is the obvious goal. So that's the most important thing that they care about. When designing for Spike, what is most important? Card tells Spike what the deck is about. Spike doesn't necessarily care whether a card tells them or not what to do with it. Low casting cost, a little tricky. Spike does care about cost, but they don't care about a card just because of its cost. Like, they don't care about crappy one-drop limited draft chaff just because it costs 1. It has to have a good relative cost and be efficient. Very open-ended. They kind of like that. Like they like to be able to have ability to flex a card um, in order to outplay someone. Producing card advantage is something Spikes like, but lets them feel that they outplayed their opponent is the most important, I think. Um, whether they outplayed them by selecting a better card for their deck, or they outplayed them because it gives them more interaction, because, you know, yeah, outplaying their opponent is an important aspect of being Spike. All right, a card is too slow for tournament play. What does that mean? More than 15 turns, that's just an artificial number somebody came up with. Never heard that before. The player will monopolize too much of the play time. I thought about this for a minute, but I'm pretty sure that there's cards that are too slow for tournament play that don't cause one player to monopolize the time. It might cause their opponent to take a lot more time dealing with it, or getting it, like resolving the spell may not be all on one player, but on both players, right? If it's a card that is too slow for tournament play. Causing problems for coverage, too much commentary devoted to it. That doesn't seem like a main reason, and it'd be kind of weird if all they talked about was the reason the games were going slow. Making too many matches run over time in tournaments is a problem. It ruins FNM. And I think they care more about the general health of FNM than they do the general health of the Pro Tour. The opponent will call the judge too often with a request of slow play. That's not always necessarily the case. Like, they could just be trying to resolve the spell. It just takes a long time. So that's not necessarily a problem. That would be the real problem. Next, commander decks. What is the most important goal? I had to do a little research on this one. Each deck has a brand new theme. Not all commander decks have brand new themes. The dragon deck was not a brand new theme. I mean, there was a deck with angels, demons, and dragons before. Tribal is not a brand new theme. There's already tribal commander decks. Designing new cards for Legacy and Vintage, they've come out right and said that even though that's a place to put some of those cards, that's not the main priority of Commander. Based on popular Commander decks, likewise, they also have new Commander decks, right? They aren't just trying to copy decks that already existed. They're trying to spawn new decks and more deck building, which is why this is the right answer. The Commanders inspire people to build new decks. They want them to buy the cards for the Commanders, give them a whirl in their decks, and be like, all right, I'm going to build all of these decks. Yeah. The colors are equally represented was tricky. But if you just look at the most recent release, if you look at their 4 decks, some colors were in only 2 different decks, and some were in 3 different decks of the 4. It wasn't symmetrical. It was asymmetrical. It wasn't completely symmetrical. It wasn't completely asymmetrical either. Like, it wasn't like one color wasn't represented at all. But they weren't equally represented. Okay, this was an interesting question. Which of the following creatures is the weakest in a typical standard legal draft format? I love that they asked this, because they need people who understand draft. Okay, 10 mana, 10/10. Hey, that's really strong. I mean, that's bigger than the rest of them. That must be the right answer, right? Well, it's actually very weak, because you're never going to get to 10 mana in a typical standard legal draft format. 6/6 for 6 has its places, right? It can rule a board. 8 mana, 8/8 runs into the same problem as the 10/10. 4/4 for 4 is an amazing rate for a common, and for the mana. Like, I would always run a 4/4 for 4. 2/2 for 2 is playable. Like, sometimes that's actively good in a format. A lot of the times it's just kind of 23rd cards. It's mostly good just for filling in the curve. The 4/4 is going to be played in almost every Magic game and be really strong compared to whatever board you play it into. And so that is the strongest card, in my opinion. We're asking which one is weakest. Well, the 10/10 is the weakest, because you're never going to play it. The strongest is the 4/4. All right. This is a question that I have gone back and forth on a lot, but I think I have an answer. Lead of a set has removed a black instant removal spell from their set. Wants you to create potential replacement designs. What is the most important part? I found it weird that they're removing a black instant removal spell And what, I'm only going to design, like, what? Why would I design a non-black instant removal spell or a non-instant black? You know what I mean? Like, why do I only get to pick one of these things? I should probably try and pick a replacement that's as close as possible to what they removed. Well, they're asking what's most important. Well, it actually being removal means it has the same function as the card that was removed. So maybe that's most important. It being an instant, I don't know how important that is. Removal spells can often vacillate between sorcery or instant. That does change the card a lot in terms of power level and constructed viability, but it often performs the same function just in a different way. It being innovative, this is kind of a trick because innovative doesn't necessarily mean good. Mark Rosewater has written entire articles about how innovation does not necessarily mean good design. Um, and there's plenty of printed cards that are not innovative but are more iterative but are still good game design. It's a black card. It's a powerful card. It doesn't say anything about being powerful. They might just need something different for limited, right? It being a black card is most important in my opinion because when they remove something from a set and need to replace it, it has to be the same color. It absolutely has to be the same color because they need exact color balance in a set file for it to be everything needing to match up. I guess we don't know which phase in design this is, but considering it's being removed from a set and we're trying to put something back, I think it's most important that it fits the card file, and it doesn't fit the card file if it's not the same color. The colors still have to maintain a balance, whether you're maintaining the right ratio of creatures and spells and instants and sorceries and all of that is not as important as it being the right color, because otherwise the file just doesn't work. You have one too many black cards or one too few, and you're going to have to make another black card anyway. So that's the answer. Fingers crossed. Why do green's common creatures tend to be a bit more efficient than white creatures? Green players love powerful creatures. This is true. Is that the right answer? Who knows? Green is the enemy of blue and black. This just seemed like a really weird answer to me. Maybe in a roundabout way they're saying that blue and black don't have great creatures and so green should have good ones. But it doesn't seem like an answer. It just seems like an observation. White has stronger removal. Again, an observation, but maybe they're saying, white and green both like creatures, but white has better removal, so green gets some better creatures. That's suggesting that the important thing here is the balance between the two colors. But I don't think that's really the issue. White is the enemy of black and red. That makes even less sense than that one. This is the way it has always been, is when you can obviously throw out, because they are more than willing to change things up. Some things have too much inertia to them, but green players do love powerful creatures. This is the most affirmative and true statement that's relevant to the statement that I can find. So that is the answer. Which color gets the second fewest common creatures in a typical set? Red. Blue is the crappiest creature color. We know that. And red and black are not the creature colors that green and white are. So I knew it's one of those. I was pretty sure it's red, but I did some math on Gatherer. Again, I'm being a tryhard for this. And in Rivals of Ixalan, red and black have the same number of creatures at common. In Ixalan, red and black have the same number of creatures at common. And I thought, well, maybe because this is a tribal set, they needed to make sure that even colors like red had just one more creature per set, so they were more likely to hit their creature types that they need in their tribal set. And I went back another standard block to Amonkhet and Hour of Devastation, and that was the case. Red had one fewer creature than black in both of those sets. So the answer is red. All right, which of these green keywords does design have to be the most careful when using? And just glancing at these answers, hexproof, it can be potentially problematic. And then I thought, well, maybe this is a trick where development needs to worry about hexproof and design doesn't need to worry as much. And design has some other issues with these other keywords that are actually more important. And I looked at what Mark Rosewater says in green for all of these keywords. Death Touch can't be on big creatures. Trample usually is on big creatures. Reach can be on basically anything, often with more toughness than power, but that's not necessarily true. Vigilance is usually on a bigger creature to differentiate it from white. Hexproof is usually on a bigger creature without evasion. So just that alone, that's an additional requirement. That's 2 requirements on creatures with hexproof. All the other ones, if they had requirements, were just 1 requirement. Also, we know that hexproof can get out of hand and lead to unfun situations when designed poorly, put on the wrong, on something early that can be Voltroned up, or something late that also has evasion. So that's the answer. I don't see how any of the other ones can compete with that. All right. We try to avoid making 2-color cards where the card could be done as a monocolor card in one of the 2 colors. So we've got a creature, 4/4 creature with flying and vigilance, no other abilities. Which color combinations would be the best choice for this card? So right away, when I think of how to answer this, I know that white has both flying and vigilance. It's the only color that has white, or that has flying and vigilance. And so any multicolor pairing that has white does not answer this question because, it could just be a mono white card instead of white plus whatever it is. So it's not white black, it's not green white, it's not white blue. What about black green and blue black? Well, blue has flying and black has flying, but neither have vigilance. Black has flying, green has vigilance. Which is kind of you can make a Sarah Angel with black and green. Who would have thunk, right? All right, most important quality for a set to have. This was one of my 12 because it's so subjective, right? I joked with people beforehand that this test is going to have a bunch of, what is the least most medium designed card of the following? This feels like a least most medium question. Most important quality for a set to have. It matches the story. Story is not as important as the other things. It's fun to play. Games should be fun. Sets should be fun. I think that's a good answer. It's easy to learn. That's also a good answer. New World Order was done precisely because their sets were not easy enough to learn, and therefore they were failing. It has powerful cards. Some sets don't sell very well because there's not chase cards in them. It has great strategic depth. Some sets are panned because you can't play them. You can't draft them enough. Rivals of Ixalan has this issue. People feel like it doesn't have strategic depth. It's very surface level tribal stuff. And then in limited, it's just evasion and beatdown. And there's no other way to play. Voltroning up. However, what is the most important quality? I think it's it being fun. We know that Magic is not easy to learn. In fact, we have products where their most important quality is it being easy to learn, and those are the intro decks, right? We don't need a set to be as easy to learn as the intro decks. We already have something with that priority level. It matching the story is not as important as these other things. Having powerful cards, yes, that's important, but we already know that standard level is meant to be less powerful than modern, and they're okay with new sets not being as powerful as some older sets. They're okay with it being not as powerful as the sets next to them. They like to have a fluctuation in power level in standard sometimes. Of course, I would like, sets should have some powerful cards, right? But it being fun to play, this is a game. Games should be fun. This is just fundamental to Magic. That has to be the answer. Another fingers crossed for me. Which of these creature keywords tends to have the most value in a control deck? Well, lifelink grants life. One of the main weaknesses of control decks is they often, shed life those first, 3-4 turns before they can start stabilizing, and their life total matters a lot to them. It's a resource that they use to gain card advantage and tempo. Trample. They don't care about that. Menace is a form of evasion, I guess. First Strike can be a potent defensive keyword, but lifelink will grant you value in an important weakness, an important resource that control decks covet, whether it's attacking or blocking. Haste is speed. I don't know. That's obviously more aggressive. Lifelink is the answer. When set design holds a draft, most of the time there's exactly 8 drafters. Why do they do this crazy process because they only have 8 people in Wizards of the Coast. Because we have this exact pyramid of Spikes, Timmys, and Johnny Jennies that must be assembled. It's like the Power Rangers. If they have 2 of the Red Ranger and 3 of the Yellow Ranger, they can't build the guy. It's the most common number of drafters in the real world. Well, I suppose that's true. Smaller booster boxes hold 24 booster packs. I feel like this is kind of a subset argument of that argument. We have tables that sit 8 drafters. Poor Wizards of the Coast. They can't pony up for 10-player tables. And that's why our draft format is the way it is, ladies and gentlemen. It's the table size at Wizards of the Coast. No, this is the answer. And there's a reason for that has to do with game design. But of the ones here, that's the answer. I've designed a card. I want play design team to like it. How should I choose my casting cost? This is one of the 2 hardest questions for me. Yeah, of the final 2 where I feel like it could go one of 2 ways, and I've kind of picked an answer, but I would not be surprised at all if I got this one wrong. Use your intuition. That seems like a wrong answer, right? Like, obviously you should be thinking about, if you are consciously trying to do something, not thinking about it seems bad. Pick the strongest cost that isn't broken. Okay, you want a card to be powerful based on casting cost. So choose the best cost as long as it's not broken. That seems like a good answer. However, we don't often always know that. Ask someone from the play design team to choose the casting cost. I imagine this is suggesting, say, hey, Melissa, I have this card. I think it'd be great and constructed. What would I have to cost it for it to see play and constructed? Oh, that would be probably 2 and a red. Thanks. I'm almost certain I've heard Mark Rosewater say, this is what I do. If I want to push a card that I think would be really fun and constructed, I ask them what I should cost it for that. But I couldn't find that anywhere. It's very difficult to search back through his Tumblr archives, to search Drive to Work, obviously, because it's audio. There are transcripts that I actually have loaded up in my tryhardness, and I've been trying to search different keywords to see if I heard it from there, but I can't find it. Someone will have to let me know if that is something he said before, that he actually suggests this technique. Just ask them what to cost it. Something I have found in a lot of articles, though, is it doesn't matter. Design doesn't cost the cards. We design for a flat power level. I've seen that phrase a lot. We design for a flat power level, and then they cost it. The reason I think this is the right answer instead, or at least the reason I'm going to go with, is that this question kind of assumes you are going to do what you can to make it appealing, including casting cost. How should you choose it if you want them to like it? Well, I mean, obviously you wouldn't choose a really crappy casting cost if you want them to like it, right? So, I don't know. If you get it wrong. I mean, that's very tempting. Find a similar card as a basis for the casting cost and make it one cheaper. That doesn't work. Like, what if you want to make a Doomblade card you think could be good and constructed? Casting it for just 1 mana instead of 2 would be a disaster. Like, that's obviously bonkers good. So, that's a mistake. I think just asking them, it makes the most sense. I mean, they're the ones with the expertise in this area. And if you want them to like it, ask them how they would like it. Do they want it rare, medium rare, well done? You're serving it to them. So that's my answer. I think that's my third. Fingers crossed. My goal on this was to get like 73 out of 75. Hopefully people watching this video aren't like, you've already got 5 wrong. We'll see how this goes. Which of these evergreen keyword abilities is most likely to be put on a common white creature? I think they're tertiary and flash, tertiary and trample, primary indestructible, primary vigilance. I think secondary no, they're primary double strike, but double strike doesn't show up at common as often anymore. You look at these 3 mechanics that I think they're white is primary in all 3. Vigilance shows up with a lot more regularity than the other 2. Indestructible has problems at common on creatures without any other kind of drawback or activation cost. The answer is vigilance. The fact that it's on a creature and not on a spell makes me think it's vigilance. If it were a spell, I'd say indestructible, because I think white likes to grant indestructible more than it grants any of these other things at common. But it's on a creature. Best describes how a counterspell-based blue deck should contribute to a standard environment. This was an interesting one, and I had an answer I initially liked, but I wasn't sure. This was one of my 12 that I felt like I had to come back to that I wasn't positive on. It's the most fun when the counterspell player has the ability to stop the opponent from doing anything. That's what counterspells do. But even if the counterspell player wants to do that, that doesn't make standard fun. Similar logic here. If the counterspell deck is the strongest in standard, that means the deck to beat doesn't let you play things. That's not good. It's not fun. It's the most fun when it's mono blue. And this was interesting because I thought, well, if it's mono blue, you don't have to track their mana as much. Because one way to play against a counterspell deck is by tracking how much blue mana they have available. If they only have a blue and like a white that they have access to, you know that they have a conditional counterspell. Maybe it's a negate or essence scatter, but it might be a mana leak variant. And you might, if you know the format well, you might find ways to play around it. Like, oh, they're holding up Censor. I just need to hold up one extra mana on my X cost spell. But that interaction, if everything's blue, you can't do that. If everything is blue for him and his house and everybody around, then this format just doesn't work. Also, it seems like a stupid deck. Standard is the most fun when counterspell decks aren't competitive. I think that is false also. I think that counterspell decks, there's a lot of players that enjoy that. People like to draw go. And if that's never competitive, that's just a series of players that don't really have another archetype that they're naturally going to drift to. Counterspells are also important for format. I think players like having decks that have ways of dealing with all their weaknesses, and that's what counterspells do, even if it's not always at the right rate, and you have to line things up exactly right. But I don't think that's the answer. I wasn't sure about this one because I liked this answer, but it doesn't seem as obviously the right answer. That's why I had to double check and do some research. Standard is the most fun when the counterspell player has a way to win quickly and efficiently once they take control. I agree with this, but I was like, is that necessarily true? And so I read some stuff. There was a play design article about how they design for control, and this is something they mentioned. They much prefer control decks where once you have control, you win quickly, versus once you have control, you're going to use Elixir of Immortality 6 times to cycle through your entire deck and mill them out, and go to turns, and nobody ends up with a win, and you have a draw. That's not fun. It's more fun if, okay, obviously you're going to win, and you don't have to wait for them to win. They win pretty quickly. That's why I like Approach a lot as a card. That's why I also prefer Dig Through Time to Sphinx's Revelation, because Dig Through Time lets you find the right cards to win if you're already ahead, and the other one just gives you all the cards, some of which you're probably going to win once you've resolved a couple of those, but it might take a while still. Which of the following... Okay, assuming a creature is strong enough to see standard play, which of the following is not a good quality for a green creature to have? Larger stats than other creatures at its mana cost. That's key to green efficiency, so that's not a problem. Tapping to produce mana, that's not a problem. Destroying artifacts or enchantments, it's important green has that tool. Draws multiple cards without attacking or blocking. Hey, isn't that kind of a bend? But wait, green can use its creatures to draw cards. It uses +1/+1 counters to grow to very large sizes. Green likes to grow, and being big, I don't see how that's a problem. I think this is more of a problem, and I think one reason it might be a little tricky is that we just had Tireless Tracker in Standard, which gave green decks card advantage just from playing lands. It didn't need to attack or block, and it got bigger too when you wanted it to. But the real issue with that card, and I think R&D considers it a mistake, but I don't think they've said as much, is that green's ability to get card advantage should come from its creatures, but if it can get card advantage continually, like drawing more than just one card or drawing lots of cards, they need to invest and use that creature some way, not just have it on the battlefield like some enchantment that gives them cards every turn. So I think that's the right answer, regardless of Tireless Tracker. All right, they're bringing back Storm. They're not actually bringing it back. But in Ravnica, which guild would be the best match? Well, Simic likes science and crazy decks and combos and synergies. Selesnya, I don't see the reason for that. Izzet is the right answer. They like casting spells a lot. Replicate is kind of like Storm Light, except not like Storm, but has a similar flavor anyway. Rakdos, maybe they like pain, and Storm is a painful mechanic for people. Orzhov, yeah, it's definitely Izzet. They like casting lots of spells, which is a requirement for Storm. That's the right answer. Synergy theme in a set needs you to draw specific cards. Which mechanic can help you do that more often? Cycling gets you through your deck. Transmute can find the right cards you need. Investigate helps you draw more cards, a la cycling. Scry lets you dig further. Kicker can do all kinds of crazy things, but not necessarily drawing cards or drawing the right cards. That's the answer. Okay. Oh, this one was tricky. We're going to use Gather on this. Which of the following designs from Legends would be most reasonable to recost into a competitive standard card? I could see myself getting this one wrong, but I feel good about my answer, and I have my reasons, which I think is as good as I can ask. Mana Drain, super powerful counterspell, but they did actually reprint this for standard during Dragon's Maze. They had a card called Plasm Capture that basically did this, except it was green, green, blue, blue. People are like, wow, Mana Drain in standard. This is going to crazy, right? Simic decks are going to run this. They didn't run it. There wasn't really a Simic deck. That is such a prohibitive casting cost. It did not become a competitive standard card. It's not even competitive in EDH. It's not competitive in Modern. Mana Drain is not competitive. They've already recosted the effect. I don't think trying again is a good idea. Land tax was my answer. So land tax, it's kind of a color pie breaking thing because it gives white card advantage, oddly, in lands. So card advantage, which is mainly blue, that cares about lands, which is mainly green thing, for 1 mana and get you 3 cards. It's basically Ancestral Recall for white. Am I right? The trick with this question was players assuming it had to be the same color. All the question says is that it needs to be recost. And I think land tax could be a green enchantment for 1 and a green or 2 and a green and be competitive just because of the card advantage from it. It would be in a grindy deck. I mean, if they wanted it to be competitive, it could be 1 and a green. But the thing is, green is likely going to end up having more land, and I think it's more okay for them to do that than white to suddenly get all those cards. But looking at the other cards and the reasons why they are not the answers, which makes me feel better about land tax being the answer. There's the whole Plasm Capture thing with Mana Drain. Arborea is a weird card. Creatures can't attack a player unless that player cast a spell or put a non-token permanent onto the battlefield during his or her last turn. So, in Standard, I, on my turn, do nothing. I don't play a land. I don't cast a spell. I just draw my card and say, go. You can't attack me. This seems like a good strategy against mono red. It's like, all right, you've got me down to 2 life. I'm just not going to do anything until I draw my Wrath. I'll just draw. Oh, here's my Wrath. Now I'll kill everything and then gain life. This seems really unfun and horrible for a standard environment. To be competitive, right? Acid Rain. This sounds like land destruction. Oh, it's even worse. It's destroy all forests. That is not good for standard. Maybe if it were green, so you're destroying your own forest, but no. Presence of the Master. This was one I was not... Whenever a player casts an enchantment spell, counter it. I could totally see something like this as a sideboard card in a standard environment that cares about enchantments. Like, what if white has all of this great enchantment removal, like Cast Out and Pacifism in all of its control decks? Or what if there's a lot of enchantment creatures running around And Wizard says, all right, we learned the lesson from energy. We're going to have our potential sideboard card in case things get out of hand. But it's very niche, right? And how do you recast it or recost it? I mean, I think in that situation, you might be willing to pay 4, but it only stops a very specific type of card. It doesn't seem necessarily fun. Like if I've got my enchantment deck, oh, I can't play enchantments. That's not great. I feel like the environment it's competitive in, it feels unfun. But it just feels like a sideboard card, which makes it seem a reasonable reprint. But it's just such a binary sideboard card. It just hoses the whole thing. And I'm having, like in Theros block, that wouldn't even do that much in the enchantment block because mono black and mono blue, I mean, it hoses some of their cards, but not all of them, not the most important ones. So I think land tax is the most reasonable one. Okay, which category of player most dislikes high variance in gameplay? High variance being defined as larger swings and outcome possibilities for individual cards outside of the player's control. Timmy is okay with variance. Multiplayer players enjoy variance, generally. Johnny, Jenny, maybe they don't like variance because they have a specific thing they want their deck to be doing. But I think Spike is the most offended. New players, I thought, well, maybe new players don't like variance in their games, but that's more of a thing about gamers in general disliking variance. I think new players might enjoy it even more because it gives them a better shot at beating a more experienced player. Spikes loathe this. They want control over their cards. They want to use their cards as tools that are extensions that express themselves, that express them being better than opponents. And if they play a card that benefits the opponent more than them, that doesn't help them express themselves as being better. Okay, I love these limited questions. Which of the following cards is the best in limited play? Hey, these are all commons. Cowl Prowler is a 6/6 for 6 in green. Hey, that's a big creature. It's bigger than everything else. It's the right answer. No, it's not true. Duress lets you steal any card from their hand. It's better than their best non-creature spell. Well, it's actually really bad in limited too. Not worth a card. Lava Axe, very situational, famously bad limited card. Windrake has Evasion, famously good limited card. However, of late, Windrake has not been good enough to be a top pickable common. Pacifism, however, has been moved to uncommon because of how good it is in limited. Pacifism, always an A common. All right. Which of the following are not generally aimed at competitive standard play? Oh, this one was weird. I didn't. What are they asking? Which of the following are not generally aimed at competitive standard play? So, either this is a mechanic that they don't usually want to see standard play, or it's an effect that sometimes sees standard play, but if you look at all of the cards that have this effect, most of them do not. That second one doesn't sound right to me, but it's what tripped me up here. Direct damage that can hit either creatures or players. Well, Open Fire is in Hour of Devastation. It's an instant that does direct damage to creatures or players, but it's not aimed at competitive standard play. It's 3 mana, deal 3. That's right. However, they have Lightning Strike and Shock, which are obviously aimed at competitive standard play. So, okay. Card draw. There's a lot of things that draw cards, but there's obviously card draw cards that are meant for competitive standard play. That stupid energy card, or you scry 2, draw 2 energy. Obviously aimed at competitive standard play. They obviously have cards that are card draw cards that are aimed at standard. Counterspells. I'd say most of the counterspells are aimed, they think about competitive standard when they design almost all their counterspells, because the way counterspells work these days is they have 1 or 2 unconditional ones, but also in order for counterspells to be good, you kind of want a mix of situational ones to help be safety valves for certain kinds of decks. And also the counterspell deck can have more counter spells, and makes for different kinds of good sideboard cards. Counter spell is definitely competitive. Mass creature kill, I think they only think about competitive standard play when they make mass creature kill these days. Um, exactly how much it costs, what benefit it has over the other sweepers. One shot mana acceleration. This one stands out to me from the rest of them because these are all effects that you will always see in standard. One shot mana acceleration. These are cards like Pyretic Ritual, like Seething Song, that can be in standard decks. They can be in competitive decks, and when they are, they're very powerful. They're usually used in some kind of storm variant where you do something super powerful at the end of your turn by drawing lots of cards and paying lots of mana to kind of cheat something into play that shouldn't normally be done at that part of the game. But the issue there is it is cheating, which is fine to feel like you're cheating with some mechanics, but when you're cheating a lot. They do a much better job with reanimation than they do with rituals as far as creating a cheating effect that is still fairly balanced in standard because you have to get the creature in the yard somehow and you have to find the reanimation spell. The one-shot mana acceleration can come from your hand. The other spell can come from your hand. You're losing card advantage, but you are doing something too powerful faster than you otherwise should be able to. And so I don't think they actually, when they have these effects, I don't think they want them in standard. I do think that when the Burn at the Stake combo deck was in standard, all of those cards were in Avacyn Restored, and they all worked together to make an interesting combo deck that was not a competitive standard deck. So even when it's been at its most competitive recently, I don't think it was aimed at competitive standard play, because I think when this is in competitive standard play, it's too good. It also creates too much variance. Like if your deck is built around this, you have to have the rituals to do the thing fast enough for it to matter. The only problem with this is Treasure. Treasure is one-shot mana acceleration, and it's definitely in standard. Captain Lannery Storm, Chandra, she gives you +2 red mana. That's one-shot mana acceleration. And she's one of the most competitive standard cards there is. But I think generally that it's not an effect that they want in standard compared to like card draw, direct damage, counterspells, mass creature kill. My hang up on this is, and I know I'm spending a lot of time on this question, I'm kind of talking myself through it, is does that really fit the question? I wish they had worded it differently, but I think that's the answer. It feels different than the other ones. These other ones are already in every standard format. This is not. Which of the following iconic white cards is most reasonable to reprint? Armageddon, no. Destroying All Lands is bad. Swords to Plowshares is more powerful than Path to Exile. Maybe situationally worse, but way too strong. They would never reprint it. Karma, I think, like hoses everything of a certain color. It's Number of Swamps. They don't do that kind of effect anymore. Land Tax, we talked about. That's a lot of card advantage for white. Ancestral Recall in white. Baneslayer Angel. They print cards that basically are Baneslayer Angel, and they don't see play. So, I think Baneslayer Angel. Baneslayer Angel is the famously splashy card that was so good even in a Doomblade format, but still not too strong. That couldn't protect itself, didn't give an ETB value, but was still good enough to run. And that made for a better standard. Okay. Which of these is most reasonable to reprint? This one was a little trickier. Cards weren't as famous. Demonic Tutor, we know. Too strong. Infernal Darkness was a weird one that I had to look up. Like I'd seen it before but couldn't remember it. You pay a cumulative upkeep. Cumulative? Cumulative upkeep. They don't like cumulative upkeep. So it's not that one. Sinkhole. That's land destruction for 2 mana. Underworld Dreams was on a card in Theros as a creature. Whenever an opponent draws a card, this deals 1 damage to him or her. They could reprint. I don't see why they couldn't reprint that. Also, its cost is so prohibitive. Like, I would be surprised if it saw play in a competitive standard deck. So I think that'd be very reasonable to reprint. Oh, Demonic Consultation is the one where you have to look. You name a card, you look at your top 6 cards, and then you pull it from there. But it's 1 mana. It's super powerful. Library Manipulation combines with it really well. Underworld Dreams is a lot more reasonable. Felidar. Oh, this is a fun question. Relevant to Standard. I kind of like the new breadth of the questions. I was a little horrified when Mark Rosewater said that it had a broader area of topics than previous tests. I'm like, oh crap. But I've liked their questions. It basically shows that you pay attention to Standard, you play Limited, you think about Constructed, those kinds of questions. Okay, it was banned because of the cat lady combo. What could we have done to fix it? Well, if so, Felidar Guardian bounces a permanent when you play it. So if you play Saheeli Ray, you make a copy of Felidar Guardian, or you just play Felidar Guardian to bounce Saheeli Ray, whatever, in either order. You make a copy of Felidar Guardian, which bounces Saheeli Ray, which makes a copy. You've infinite Felidar Guardians and 1 Saheeli Ray because legend rule. However, if it only returned it at the beginning of the next end step, then the combo stops at the end of the turn, and it doesn't go anywhere. If adding to the cost doesn't keep the combo from happening, changing her cost doesn't keep it from happening, creating a flexible instant that can destroy either of them, they already had that. There was that instance that could kill planeswalkers or creatures. Oh, maybe they didn't actually. But that's not the answer. The combo should not exist in Standard. Infinite combos with just 2 cards, horrible. This is a tricky answer because something like that prevents Splinter Twin type combos where you have to tap the creature to continue the combo, but it was not a tap ability, it was just bouncing something else. So that is what would actually stop the combo. Alright, if these are all at the appropriate power and win rate, what would be the least fun? An enchantment that stops all creatures from attacking. Yeah, red would love that, right? Something they can't interact with, which destroys their game plan completely. No thank you. Artifact that taps to add 3, that's abusable with untap effects. But if it's cost at the appropriate power level, it probably costs at least 5 mana, and that's more okay. Enchantment that lets you name a card, then stops a name card from being cast. That card is called Nevermore, and it wasn't played. Sorcery that destroys all non-land permanents. We've had those, and they were fine. Artifact causes each player to lose 2 life during their upkeep. I think that's probably okay. This is the only thing that you can't really play around. It stops entire decks from being able to win, and they can't deal with it. Very unfun. This one was tricky. It was one of my 12. I think I have the right answer, though. Alright, what are they least likely to reprint in a Standard set? Counterspell, that would be awful. Dark Ritual. Rituals, they're more willing to reprint than many of these other things, but not in black. It's in red now. Also, not at that rate. They don't like rituals. Lightning Bolt, they had that in Standard recently. Why wouldn't they bring it back again? Well, in doing my research for this question, I read an article by Sam Stoddard where he talks specifically about Lightning Bolt and how, are we likely to see Lightning Bolt again? And he said, well, let's just say that one of the most powerful removal spells in Modern isn't going to show up in Standard. It would warp the format so much. Okay. Swords to Plowshares. We talked about this earlier, being something that is just super powerful. Lightning Bolt seems more likely than Swords. Sword seems also out of pie. Llanowar Elves. Well, this seems like the most innocuous of those. However, we know that nowadays in Standard, they like their mana elves to cost 2 instead of 1. They don't want the ramp to start on turn 1. Ramping from 1 mana to 3 is a lot more dramatic than ramping from 2 mana to 4. Playing a 3-drop on turn 2 is very powerful. Playing a 4-drop on turn 3 is not... that's powerful, it's not as powerful. It also means that you really need it in your opening hand for it to do its job. Whereas you have another turn to get your 2-drop ramp. However, In the same article that talked about Lightning Bolt, he talked about Elvish Mystic, because Elvish Mystic and Lightning Strike were both leaving the format. And he said that Elvish Mystic, I can see us bringing back one CMC ramp as, it's secretly very strong, but it's not as problematic as some of these other things. And it gives some fluctuation in power level to the environment. It fluctuates the pie a bit, or not the pie, but how strong certain colors are relative to each other. One way they can increase green strength is instead of their creatures all being ridiculous, they can make their ramp better. And then their medium strong creatures feel stronger because they come out faster. Here's the trick though. They don't do Llanowar Elves anymore. They do Elvish Mystic because Llanowar, I'm pretty sure, is gone. It's on Dominaria. The problem is we're going back to Dominaria right now in Standard. So if it's a flavor reason that this is not the answer, I'm going to be mad because we're literally going to Dominaria. I mean, I don't know. Why Llanowar? Why Elvish Mystic over Llanowar Elves? And then here's the answer. The name Llanowar would set it in a certain plane. However, Llanowar still exists, I think. I mean, I know Dominaria still exists. It's kind of a wasteland. Oh, oops, custom cards. Hopefully you don't work for Wizards. Okay. From a design standpoint. So I think just power level wise and just looking at the health of Standard, that is the correct answer compared to the other ones. I would hate to lose that question because of the flavor reason, especially knowing we're going to Dominaria, like in a couple weeks. All right, design standpoint. Biggest problem with this card, Mega Bolt, 4-mana instant, deal 8 damage to a creature. It blurs the line between black and red. It basically says destroy target creature, right? Which is Doomblade. That's not a problem. 7 being more aesthetic than 8. Well, I guess. Too much damage for 4 mana. That's not true, actually. This card isn't even that amazing. Should it be a sorcery? I mean, that's a different kind of question. It's a color pie problem. And I think Mark Rosewater's even talked about cards like this before as a color pie problem. All right. Which of these text boxes would be red flagged as highly complex for a common creature? I am glad that they talked about red flagging. Ruben Covington did this amazing article talking about all of the red flags that R&D has. Okay. Whenever this attacks, creatures you control get +1/+1 till end of turn. This affects the whole board. That's a red flag. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, this gets +1/+1 until end of turn. I mean, that can get out of hand with tokens, I guess, but that's not as red flagged as that one. When this enters the battlefield, target creature gets +2/+2 against trample. ETB abilities generally aren't highly complex. This isn't that highly complex. It gives over-the-top evasion. Here's some board complexity. This creature has an activated ability. 1R gets +2/+0 and first strike. So it can just eat a creature if your opponent isn't paying attention to it. I think in some ways this is more complex than that first one, because it's an on-board trick that will just stop combat. They're not going to attack into your creature that can make itself big and have first strike. I mean, you can hold up mana and then at the end of your turn do something else instead. This one, though, is a real problem. 2 and a white, no tap, mind you. Target creature gets +1/+1 till end of turn. It can make itself bigger. It can make that creature bigger. It can make that creature bigger. If you have 6 mana available to you, you could do any kind of weird combo. The opponent doesn't know how to play around this or to play into it. It's going to paralyze the game. This is most likely to be red flagged as highly complex. Okay, you're playing multiplayer. Which pair of mechanics would cause the most confusion if they frequently appeared together in a play environment? I don't remember if this was one of my 12, but I researched it up. Miracle and cycling, maybe there's the issue of memory, like, wait, is this the second card I cycled this turn or the first? Cycling will lead to more miracles on opponents' turns, but that's not necessarily confusing so much as just you really need to understand miracle if you're going to be drawing cards on opponents' turns. Myriad and Battalion. Myriad, when this creature attacks, you create copies of it that attack other opponents. Battalion says when this creature attacks, if 3 or more creatures are attacking, you get a bonus. However, both these triggers happen at the same time. If you don't already have 3 normal creatures attacking and you're relying on your Myriad tokens to trigger Battalion, that doesn't happen. Because the tokens happen after Battalion is checked, which is why it would create confusion. So these don't work together like you want them to. That's the confusing thing. Modular and Scavenge, maybe it's confusing. Like if you put Scavenge counters on a modular creature and then it dies, do all of the counters move? Well, yes. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. It's fairly straightforward. Fabricate, Formidable. Formidable cares about total power, and Fabricate creates. I don't see where the confusion is there. Devour and Exploit, both of them sacrifice creatures. Devour sacrifices other creatures. Exploit, you can sacrifice itself. That could create confusion because you forget which one is which. The answer is Myriad and Battalion because it doesn't work like you want it to. It goes counterintuitive to what you think the combo should be. And that's why that's the answer. If we printed an enchantment with the same text as Stabilizer, which is an artifact, cost 2, players can't cycle cards. Which color should it be? My first instinct was white, because white most often says what other players can't do with its hate bears, its strong sideboard cards that hose specific strategies, its laws, right? But I did some searching on Gatherer. Red and black also, surprisingly, create rules. However, that rule is almost always opponents cannot gain life. Or players can't gain life. Players can't prevent damage. Damage can't be prevented. That's the only rule that they care about. The rule that allows them to hit opponents harder. So I'm pretty sure it's white. Maybe green. Yeah, I don't even see why green would care. Like, cycling is the circle of life. Why would they want to stop that? White is definitely the answer. Alright, most appropriate colors for this card. Human, Artificer. 3/2, CMC 3. You sacrifice an artifact, you get to look at top cards and pick one, put the rest on the bottom. Red likes to sacrifice artifacts. Blue likes drawing cards and filtering them. This is a blue-red card. Black-red. Black sometimes sacrifices artifacts, but they don't get that kind of filtering and draw without some other drawback. I think they would have to lose life somewhere in there. Green-blue. Green doesn't care about sacrificing artifacts. They're happy when they leave, but they're not the ones to sacrifice their own artifacts. Yeah. Yeah, the red and white don't have enough card advantage to justify this. Appropriate rarity. This is one of my 2 questions I'm just not positive on. What was the other one? Oh, like what you should do when you cost a card, who you should ask. Like how you should cost the card if you want them to like it. I feel better about that last one than this one. Okay, so what's the rarity here? Anytime I see a creature with CMC 3 that I know is multicolor and has a specific strategy, I think of Signpost Uncommons. This wants to be in an artifact deck. Maybe this is a Signpost Uncommon for a blue-red artifact deck in a future set. But then I thought, is this card too good for that, though? Like, you can have limited bombs, but do you want limited bombs with 3 mana? This, I think, would be a limited bomb because it has a lot of scope to it. When you sacrifice an artifact, you get to look at potentially like 6 cards and pick one, which feels more rare than uncommon. It doesn't even need to tap. Like, this is something you can do repeatedly on one turn. If you've got a board of artifacts and lots of mana, you topped up this guy, you're like, okay, I'm going to pay him, sacrifice this artifact, pick this card, sacrifice that artifact, pick this card. You can turn your artifacts into very cool cards. It's kind of a build-around card, and I think rare cards are more likely to be build-arounds. Uncommons can have build-arounds, though. There's even artifact sacrifice archetypes in recent limited sets. where they have the uncommons that want to sacrifice the artifacts and give you a big benefit. It's not mythic rare. It's not splashy and exciting enough or unique enough. It's not common because it's too complex. It has X in an activated ability that can be repeated for massive advantage. I think it's rare. I think. If I were designing this card as a rare, I'd be tempted to give it a keyword to make it relevant in combat and not just for its ability. So it doesn't look just like a build around, but also something that you actively want to put in a deck. Its effect isn't unique in that there's a lot of cards that filter like that. There's a lot of cards that sacrifice artifacts. But there's no cards that sacrifice artifacts that get you cards back. Except for Sage of Lat-Nam, which is a rare. Sacrifice an artifact, draw a card. And this card you have to tap to use it. However, it's from a long, long time ago. And guess what? It was originally a common in Fallen Empires. Or Antiquities, or whatever it was called. And some people mention here the reason, like, how was it shifted from common to rare? That's crazy. It was printed right before Mirrodin. Of course, they couldn't make it common when everything is about to be an artifact, and I think that's why. And somebody, Sharding Sphinx, What did they say? Oh yeah, somebody mentioned another card in here that made me look it up. Oh, Until Ethereum Astrolabe, which is an uncommon, which also you sacrifice artifacts to draw a card. However, you don't also get to filter the cards. It's not also on a body. That body doesn't have to tap. I think it's rare. Oh man, these questions I'm like not sure on. They're going to be the ones that make the difference between whether I make it or not. Let me know if you disagree with any of these. I think this is one I'm not sure on. And maybe others are feeling much differently about their certainty on certain questions. Like maybe they're way less certain about things I'm certain about and vice versa in this case. But I think that's a rare. Okay. What changes are they most likely to make? This one was one of my 12 I wasn't positive on. But, okay. So whenever you like look at the top so many cards, Wizards usually ask you to do one of two things. You either put the rest in the graveyard, or you put them under your library. More often, recently, it's not in a random order. It's in whichever order you choose. But I think with X in the cost, if you sacrifice like a Metalwork Colossus, which you're then going to sacrifice other artifacts to bring it back, you sacrifice Metalwork Colossus, you get to pick one of 10 cards, which is really cool. But the rest of them, you know, you have 9 cards, and it's a real decision point. All right, what order do I want these on the bottom? If you're sacrificing 10 cards a turn because you have some artifact engine going where you're sacrificing Metalwork Colossus every turn, being able to fix your draws that way is problematic. And so that's why it's random. And that's why Cascade has that same rider. And I think this rider is mostly because of the top X issue there. Okay, change the number of cards looked at to a locked number rather than caring about converted mana cost. That takes away some of the splash of the card, but I think it makes it more reliable to be built around. And the reason for that is just think about recent standard environments. The most common artifacts, well, I guess you have vehicles, but you also have like Thopters and servo tokens and treasure. If you sacrifice any of those to this guy, you get to look at the top 0 cards of your library because their CMC is 0. Also, naming converted mana cost of things is a little tricky. Like, it's kind of a complex rules term that reads weirdly if you don't immediately know what they're talking about the first time you read it. And I think they would rather that this card can get value out of... I think this design wants to get value out of useless artifacts that you don't want anymore. I think that's more important than getting lots of value out of expensive artifacts. And nowadays, you got all these artifact tokens running around, clues, things like that. Of course, sacrificing a clue for 2 mana to draw a card would be very similar, but I assume this fixed number would be something like 2, 3, or 4 cards, and that would be better than just using the clue. Okay, adding an ability to this card. 2, tap, put an artifact card from your hand onto the battlefield. That would be weird because then the card is doing 2 completely different things. One of them wants to sacrifice your artifacts, the other one wants to cheat good artifacts. So why do you want to cheat good artifacts and get rid of your artifacts? I guess there's some synergy there, but I think the messaging is off. Also, it's not aesthetic because you're paying 2 in sacrificing. This is paying 2 in tapping. I guess then you can pay 4 and tap it, put an artifact, then sacrifice it to dig for something. But I think this is a better change. Making the power and toughness the same, like who cares? I guess that I don't see why that's as important as that change. Putting the cards revealed into the graveyard. Doesn't mean you can't do this forever. Oh man, maybe that's the answer. Giving the creature haste is like that one. Like, yes, that's a change you can make, but it doesn't seem critical to the design because it's not even a tap ability. Putting the cards revealed into the graveyard. Okay, so when I was doing this, I was like, let me see how they do this lately. And Supreme Will, I know, does this thing. It lets you look at the top 4, and then the rest go on the bottom of your library. They don't go to your graveyard. However, if you have this, if you're doing this repeatedly, maybe they want to kind of impose the cost of it. Like, sure, you can dig a lot, but you're going through your deck faster in that way. So that is a design change. But is that more important than being able to use this with tokens? I don't think so. Also, it's more abusable if you have graveyard shenanigans, although maybe that's good too. Okay, that I told you that was the other one. Oh no, I didn't actually. I felt more certain about this before I started talking about it. I think that's the right answer though. Dead Man Walking. Okay, it's a guy, cost 7. You play it. You can return a creature, either graveyard to the battlefield, then all your creatures become copies. So returning stuff is black, black, black. None of those are black. So is it black green or blue black? Essence of the Wild makes everything a copy of itself. So is this kind of like a marriage of reanimation and Essence of the Wild? But I think blue black basically is turning all your creatures into clones of a creature from a graveyard. Yeah, I'm going to show you Essence of the Wild, because that's what makes me uncertain. So they enter the battlefield as a copy of Essence of the Wild. You still have to play creatures to make that happen. But this kind of turns all your creatures into clones, which feels blue. I think it's a blue-black thing. Yeah. Appropriate rarity. I wasn't sure on this one. This was one of my difficult 12. I ended up going with Mythic Rare because it's fairly splashy. Like, you can get not just a creature from your yard, but their yard, which is uncommon, sometimes rare with other effects. But the other effect affects all of your creatures as well. So similar to how Essence of the Wild affects, can lead to a very splashy story board. When I say storyboard, I mean a board that creates a story that you'll tell later. Like, remember when I took your legend back? All of our creatures became copies of that legend, and then they all got sacrificed. Or remember when I brought You know, you're super powerful, dinosaur back, and all my tokens became dinosaurs. That feels mythic rare to me. What change would they not make? Um, Flash? Why not? Um, why not? Only from your graveyard? Sure, why not? Only out of the opponent's? Sure, why not? Make it a 0/0 creature. At that point, why is it a 0/0 creature instead of a spell? Because it doesn't get, it dies before this thing happens, so it doesn't get the benefit of becoming a copy of the creature. So that's the clear answer to me. I mean, why would they print a card as 0/0 power toughness without also having counters and things like that? This late in the test, it was nice to have some of these really easy ones, especially after like this series of questions that like were really tough for me. Humans, wolves, and spirits. Well, the Innistrad has tribal humans, tribal wolves, and tribal spirits. That would be more appropriate. Okay, what can a card in a standard legal set not care about? Well, they care about power toughness a lot, mana cost, expansion symbol. There were some cards in like Homelands and Arabian Nights that cared, but that's not standard. That hasn't happened for a long time. Super types and subtypes. Basic is a super type, and so obviously all the cards that care about finding basic lands. Alright, what are we least likely to put on a mono red creature? Looting. Red gets looting, right? Well, they get it in the opposite direction. Well, let's see what the other options are. Returning sorcery from graveyard to hand. Red doesn't get much recursion. However, they do have the ability to return sorceries in the mechanical color pie article. Just doesn't happen a lot. Must attack a Fable is very red. Fire breathing is very red. Creatures having haste is very red. This is a color pie break. The other ones are not, even if this is rare. Yeah. Okay. This is a flashback to that horrible question from Great Designer Search 2 about enters the battlefield effects. Which of the following enters the battlefield effects is least likely to be on a common? You can return a creature to its owner's hands. That's in Rivals to Ixalan on a blue common creature. Target creature can't block this turn. That's in a lot of commons. Returning target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Hello, Gravedigger. That's a common. Oh, wait. They have bumped that to uncommon recently because they can chain each other. You can just constantly be playing Gravediggers and getting more Gravediggers back and block for eternity. So that's why they've moved that effect to uncommon instead of common these days. Creature getting +2/+2 until end of turn. Yeva's Force Mage and those types of effects happen. I mean, they just did that also with Jade 4-drop Merfolk green card in Rivals at common. Destroying an enchantment. I haven't seen this exact wording, but it makes sense to me. I don't see why they couldn't do that at common. Alright, which set is not based on factions? Ravnica. Factions. Shards had 5 factions. Ixalan had tribal factions. Amonkhet had the mummies versus the zombies versus... No, there were no tribes. Khans of Tarkir, famously a wedge set of 5 factions. Alright, what would best fit Simic? Entwine. Oh, interesting options. Flavorful wording. Feel like a scientist. Dash. They're not very aggressive. Rebound. That's kind of a spell mechanic, and they're a creature. Undying. It's a creature mechanic with +1/+1 counters, but it's also kind of a graveyard death mechanic, which would feel more at home in Golgari. Proliferate cares about counters and growth, and their creatures all have counters and grow. So I feel like Proliferate is the clear answer here. Secondary abilities. This was just a question of if you knew that the mechanical color pie article existed. Which color is secondary at Trample Red? Which color is secondary in Haste? That was black. No. Yes. It was black. Secondary in Vigilance. Green. What kind of creatures can green destroy? That's a white thing. They don't really do that so much anymore. They can destroy artifacts and flying creatures, so that means that they can destroy artifact creatures and flying creatures with Natural Eyes. One of the most iconic green cards ever since they stole it from white. White creatures in red. That's kind of a weird one. Tapped creatures and enchanted creatures. It's kind of asking if you've played Magic before. All right, which of the following mechanics is not an ability word? Ability words are the italic ones. Awaken is not italic. Awaken is it's not an action word. Keyworded action or something. I always forget those terms, but I know it's different than the other four, because those four are all italic and that one is not. That's the answer. I did look it up to make sure. Why doesn't common often have 7 mana instants and sorceries? It's just too complicated for people to count to 7. No. They're hard to design. Well, you might believe that by the fact that they don't exist. So, well, maybe it's just too hard to do. The real answer is it's too impactful for common. Instants and sorceries have to be impactful because they're one-time effects, whereas creatures do their thing turn after turn until they die. So for it to be a one-time effect that also costs 7 means you've got to be getting a 2-for-1 somehow, often a 3-for-1. And they don't like 2-for-1s at common, much less 3-for-1s. Sometimes they'll let you draw 3 cards. Sometimes. But not for 7 mana, right? At that point, you're destroying 2 creatures, which is bonkers. It's too impactful for common. That's the real issue. Also, it kind of sends a lie to your opponent, or to your players, that look how splashy and awesome this card is. Maybe you'll get to cast it. And they make these decks with these huge, expensive cards they never get to play. It's hard enough with the expensive creatures. They should only have expensive, appealing creatures at common, not also instants and sorceries. Does not make the math too hard. I mean, that's kind of true, but only because of that. Which world has the most expansions set on it? Mirrodin had 6. Ravnica had 6. Zendikar had 5. Innistrad had 5. Dominaria had a billion. So that's the answer. Least linear. I'm glad they asked about linear. Rally makes you want lots of allies. Delirium makes you want to put stuff in the yard. Energy makes you want more energy. Morph actually does it's slightly linear in that the more morph creatures you have, the harder it is for your opponent to guess which is which. Like, you can bluff more with more morph. Transform, there's no reason that it's linear at all, because different cards have different transform triggers. So morph is slightly more linear than transform, in my opinion, just because of how it plays out, not because of some obviously linear aspect of the mechanic. Okay, Power Conduit from Mirrodin. This question asks if you've heard of Gatherer before, because it has a legality. What formats is this card legal in? It's legal in Legacy and in Modern and in Vintage and Commander, but not Pauper because it's not a common. I'm kind of glad they are checking to see if people know what Pauper is. Oh, this was kind of a tricky one. Why do some cards cost more than others? To make you put more lands in your deck? I mean, you're going to want lands anyway, right? Make the cards different? That does make the cards different in important ways. Higher mana costs are a hint to new players that the cards are more powerful. That's not always the case. I'd say Doomblade is more powerful than a Crawworm. People will play them later in the game. That's the answer I picked. I think the real strength of the mana system and cards having different costs is that certain cards can't be played until your opponent has had a chance to build up a board or find certain answers off the top of their deck, or have their own creatures that are bigger that can compete. So I think higher mana cost is kind of a temporal way to deal with the tempo of the game, to make sure it has a flow to it, that it develops a certain way, instead of the most powerful stuff being playable on any turn, or all cards being the same power level at all turns. Encourage players to splash an additional color. That doesn't make any sense at all. It's the most important reason for the color pie. It does encourage deck and gameplay diversity. Wider variety of costs, that's true. It does expand the color palette usable in the art. Not really. Increases the number of distinct cards that can be designed. I don't actually know that that's true. You could have all of the same cards that are in Magic right now, except remove all of their color costs. Adds more symbols to the game. I think encouraging deck and gameplay diversity is the most important thing. Committing to colors means your deck will play differently. It also gives you an excuse to make lots of decks, because, oh, I want to make a black deck. I haven't played black for a while. Or, you know. I think that's the right answer. Which effects is design allowed to use on a standard legal black bordered card? This is interesting. Rolling a 6-sided die. Haven't there been cards like that? But not in standard for a long time. Affecting a future game with the same opponent seems crazy. Putting a card in your hand you do not own. They've been very careful about that, and I think it was even tricky for them to do that with the card X and Unstable. Having a card coexist in more than one zone. They do that with the Ninja and Unstable, and I was like, maybe there's some other example of cards that do this, but what are they? I'm not sure. Making a choice secret from the other players. Instinctually, I feel like that's got to be right. Like, players are allowed to make secret choices, right? And then I thought about it. I'm like, tutors, demonic tutor, or diabolic tutor, I should say, allows you to search your library for any card and put it into your hand, and you don't have to announce what it is, and you don't have to reveal it to your opponent. That is a choice that you have made that is secret from the other player. Also, if you have multiple morph cards in your hand, you can choose one to play as a morph card over the other, and that's a choice you've made that is secret from the other player. So I think that is allowed. Designing a card with converted mana cost of 10. Which of these card types is it least likely to be? My instinct was instant. I know like Omniscience exists. I know that Metalwork Colossus exists. There's big expensive sorceries, big expensive creatures. I don't know what the reason for this is. Maybe they want you to feel like you're really committing to something if it's going to cost you 10 mana. And so being able to hold up everything in draw control or Drago control and be like, and I'll pay 10 mana for this, you know. It's too powerful. But just checking Gatherer with cards that cost 10. There's examples of all of these except for instant. So that's the answer. That's my test. I don't know how long this has been running. Probably too long. But if you haven't seen the test, hopefully that gives you a good idea of the questions, what they were like. I was very happy with the test. I saw a lot of stuff. I was excited. I was like, I know the answer to that. I'm going to check it. Others, I was like, I don't know the answer to this, but I know how to figure it out. And then others, I was like, that is tricky. I don't quite know what I would put here. There are 3 or 4 of those that I've mentioned as I've gone through that I'm still not positive I got correct. But I have reasons for my choices. Hopefully those are the right reasons. I'm not going to hit submit right now. I'm going to give myself a few more hours to spot check over the ones I wasn't certain and check them out again. I read that even in R&D, the top score, because they handed the test out to all of R&D, the top scorer got a 74 out of 75. So, I mean, hopefully I get 75, because then there's no chance I miss the cut. But I'm thinking I might need to get like 71, 72 to make it to the next round. And those 4 that I feel really bad about, if they're all wrong, I might miss the cut. We'll see. Anyway, let me know in comments any differences you guys put in your test, any disagreements you guys have. And thanks for watching. Hopefully this was enlightening for you all. Good luck to all of us who took the test. We'll find out Tuesday how we did.